Thanks for watching Film Buff, really, honestly. It's fucking great.
Oh, hello. How's it going, guys? My name is Am Film Buff. Okay, so time for episode 3. That last episode, Connie comes back home, bit of a rough homecoming for him, and he finds this Titan on his house. My initial thought is that might be a relative, could be his sister, could be his mother. Those eyes are hard to miss, they made a big deal of focusing on those yellow eyes. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. Before I go any further, I need to thank all the amazing patrons. Thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you for your support. I really do appreciate it. I know my stuff doesn't really come out that fast, so to me it's quite fantastic that you guys still stick around. A lot of you actually, so much respect. Thank you for that, and I really do appreciate it. And I hope you're enjoying the early access stuff and the full length. And a reminder to anyone else, if you would like to check out episodes ahead of the YouTube releases, head on over to Patreon, check it out. Also full-length reactions, super happy to offer those, because a lot of times I do have to cut down a lot of good stuff. Basically half the episode has to go so it can stay on YouTube. But yeah, if you're interested, check it out. Yeah, man, let's just get right into episode 3.
おい、何か妙だぞ。村人の避難が本当に完了していたというのなら、巨人が誰もいないはずの空き家をこうも徹底的に壊したりするもんか。それに何より不可解なのはあの馬小屋だ。馬なしで逃げても
Dude,
生存の可能性は
I have a feeling that
松明はもう揃ったな。
that they turn into Titans.
これより壁の破壊箇所を特定しに行く。はい。
That's a big call on my end, but that's what it feels like. This one's not fully developed. There's no bodies. That's his mom.
聞いたか。今あいつが。俺には何も聞こえてない。とにかく喋ってないで任務に集中しろ。なんかあいつさ、ありえないんだけど、なんか母ちゃんに。コニー、お前は今がどんな状況か分かってんのか。
Reiner wants him out of here.
私の働きが何十万人もの命に直接影響してんだぞ。考えるなら今避難してるお前の家族のことだろう。兵士なら今最善を尽くせ。
That's his sister or that's his mom? That's the feeling I had at the end of the last episode. That.
その通りだ。
Notice how angry Reiner got and how on edge he was, because he clearly heard that. He clearly heard that. And his first thing, the first thought he had is to dismiss anything that Connie's about to say, or bring that up again. Most interesting. Most interesting.
私の生まれた家と関係ある？
ああ、ある。クリスタ、安心してくれよ。私がここにいるのは全て自分のためなんだ。
そっか。よかった。
Is she here looking after Krista? Person of Ymir, though.
ただ、なんだろう。何か。
おかしい。
ハンネス隊長、どうかされましたか？
未だに一匹も巨人と遭遇しない。壁の穴にはかなり近づいたはずだ。なのにまだ随分と静かじゃねえか。願わくばこのまま穏やかなままとはいかねえもんだろうか。
Is it because there is no hole? There's no hole.
お前らも壁に沿ってきたのか。
あ、それで穴はどこに？ここから西に異常は見つからなかった。
Holy shit.
血が見つけたんじゃないの？
いや、こちらも穴など見てない。
せめて月明かりでも。
お、
There's your moonlight.
あれは城跡か。
これはただの石じゃない。女型の巨人が残した硬い皮膚の破片だ。消えてない。そう、兄が巨人化を解いて体から切り離されてもこの通り蒸発しない、消えないんだ。もしかしたらと思ってね。壁の破片と見比べたらその模様の配列や構造までよく似ていたんだ。つまりあの壁は大型巨人が支柱になっていて、その表層は硬化した皮膚で形成されていると考えていい。
本当にアルミも言ってた通り。
でも、もし巨人化したエレンが硬化する巨人の能力で壁の穴を塞げるのだと
There's
した
no
ら、
hole though.
俺で穴を塞ぐ。
Once again.
でも荷馬車を護送する必要がないとなると志願しなくまで最速で向かいます。それを夜間に決行するのはどうでしょうか。
夜に？
はい、巨人が動かない夜にです。
なるほど。少数だけなら一気にウォールマリアまで行けるかもしれないのか。状況は絶望のどん底なのに、それでも希望はあるもんなんだね。こんなことを聞かれても困ると思うんだけど、それってできそう？
He'll try as usual, but there's no hole though.
できそうかどうかじゃねえだろ。やれ、やるしかねえだろ。こんな状況だ。
地下室、俺んちの地下室だ。親父の言葉が本当ならそこに全ての答えがあるはず
Come
だ。
on, show me that basement, man.
話すか黙るかはっきりしろよ。お願いですから。
私は話せない。
Hmm.
他の教徒もそれは同じで変わることはないだろう。それは自分で決めるにはあまりにも大きなことだからだ。我々ウォール教は大いなる意志に従っているだけの存在だ。
誰の意志？神様ってやつ？
我々は話せない。だがその大いなる意志により監視するよう命じられた人物の名なら教えることができる。
監視？
その人物は今年調査兵団に入団したと聞いた。
Ymir.
この名はあいつ。
誰？
分隊長殿、これを。
とにかく
It's Ymir.
彼女を連れてこい。彼女なら我々の知り得ない真相さえ知ることができるだろう。私ができる情報はここまでだ。あとはお前たちに委ねる。
Okay, Pastor Nick.
104機だから今は最前線にいるんじゃん。それでその104機の子は誰なの？
Ymir.
あの一番小さい子ですよ。
Krista.
金髪の長い髪で、あと可愛い。
ユミルといつも一緒にいる子です。
ユミル
Hanji knows that name.
ユミル、お前
全員を切ろう。屋上に来てくれ。すぐにだ。
Yo, what the fuck?
おい、あれを見ろ。でけえ。なんだあいつは。巨人。
Oh,
違う。なんかあれ
this one is really intriguing, man.
じゃねえか。ああ。
分かってるな、アルミン。お前は今後もハンジと知恵を絞る。
Armin!
ミカサ、お前がなぜエレンに執着してるかは知らんが、お前の能力のすべてはエレンを守ることに使え。
はい、もちろんです。
それからな、
Eren.
それからな、エレン。お前は自分を抑制しろ。怒りに溺れて本質を見失うな。今度こそしくじるなよ。
はい。
Dude.
ここの塔からなら壁が見渡せそうだ。南西の壁近くにある古城、ウトガルド城を目指そう。
This is amazing right now, man. So much to talk about. Krista. And Ymir is looking after Krista. Okay, man, that is exciting. That's, that's such a, such a hype ending. It really gets, really gets you going. I'm super excited to move on, but I'll have to end it off there. The first 3 episodes, it was just a really good final scene, to wrap up that episode. Basically switching back and forth. It's showing me the situation at the castle, and it switches to kind of Levi's send off to this crew, right? He kind of addresses all of them individually. He tells Armin to combine his knowledge, with Hanji, and like help her out. So it's so great to see someone like Levi, someone in this high position, recognizing that Armin is this genius type individual, someone who is really useful to them and their cause. And this is clear throughout the episode. Hanji, you can see the back and forth Hanji and Armin are having. So I'm loving that dynamic. Both of them kind of bringing their knowledge together, bringing their theories together. Armin's one of my favorites, so I'm happy to see this. I'm happy to see this progression. Tells Mikasa to protect Eren at all costs. Because he knows Mikasa is quite special. She is quite impressive herself. But he also said he doesn't quite know how come she's so attached to him. He starts off by that. He tells Eren to control himself. He doesn't want any more mistakes. And it's basically because Eren has a bit of a reputation for that, right? For acting first, thinking later. Just his rage. Basically, he's telling him to control his rage. He does have a bit of an anger problem. He gets triggered really fast. So he wants him to keep control. Keep it calm, and then it cuts back to the castle. It's showing me the Beast Titan climbing the wall, and it's clear that he's brought these Titans to this castle. It's clear that he's brought them here, and it looks like it's leaving. It looked like he's out. He's done. It's kind of like, oh, my job here is done. Now I'm out. That kind of feeling, right? And also, I get a confirmation that he is not even close to the same size as the Colossal. The Colossal just standing up can peek over. This this Beast Titan is climbing the wall, and it's actually quite small compared to the wall. All right, let's get to the beginning. A bit of a heartbreaking opening, right? Connie comes to realize that everyone he's ever loved has died. His father, his mother, his siblings, and it's heartbreaking. Once Reiner finds out, he shows his support. You can see it hurts him. He doesn't want to see Connie like this. The thing that keeps coming up is that Reiner is a really good friend. He cares for these, his fellow 1/4 members. Bertolt shows empathy, I think. a lot of times it's kind of tough to read his face, but I feel like he showed empathy again, I think. But he did have his trademark, bead of sweat on his cheek. He's always had that. Then that commander comes in. I'm not sure if that's his rank, but the pompadour guy, great hair for in a situation like this. He's able to have such great hair, so props to him. He thinks it's really strange that there's no bodies, there's no blood. So he thinks it's really strange. But the other lady kind of comes right in. She's like, oh, that means they got out. So she has more of an optimistic outlook on the situation. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They didn't escape. But the good thing here is that it kind of puts Connie at ease. Even though it's not the truth, it does put him at ease a little bit. He does get happy to have that thought in his mind. But as that scene is going on, they kind of cut back to the pompadour guy, and he talks about the horses, the stables. The horses are still there. That basically confirms that that no one got out. Something else happened, right? Then of course the big moment, the WTF moment. Another Titan speaks. This is now the third Titan that's spoken. The one in Ilse's notebook. This Beast Titan. Now this Titan speaks, and this is not just any other Titan. This is Connie's mom. She said "Welcome home." That basically confirms it, right? I was pretty sure this has to be a relative, because of the whole, being on his house. It looks like kind of, transformed inside and tried to break out of the house, but couldn't because they're incomplete. And then the eyes, the yellow eyes are kind of unmissable. So this kind of confirmed it, man. That was shocking, man. That actually made me tear up. That moment made me tear up, just getting the confirmation that this is his mom. And Connie's such a likable character, You don't want him to feel... you don't want him to be like this. You don't want him to be heartbroken and go through this. So that just made me tear up. Then now the question becomes, how in the fuck is this happen? How basically his whole village is a squad of Titans. They came from the south. This is the south. This is the same group of Titans that might be traveling with the Beast Titan. One of them actually regenerated, the really ugly one with the eyes, the one that was chomping on Mike. I guess his nape didn't get taken out, just like the head got crushed, so it regenerated, and it's back out there. And it's the same crew I keep seeing over and over. Though the shy one who's like covering up, he's back as well. And later on in this episode, I found out there is no hole, right? The question again becomes: does this Beast Titan have some kind of control over this change? Because he shows up, and this whole village kind of turns into Titans, right? So has he done something here to turn them into Titans? And then the next question is, how the hell did he show up? Did he climb the wall? At the end they showed me he can climb the wall, but that's unlikely though. He'd be spotted climbing the wall into the wall. The more logical explanation still remains that the human operator turned into the Beast Titan. And the next question is, why now? How come he shows up now? Does this perhaps this could be down to the fact that the Colossal and Armored, they've been gone for a long time, and now there's a different approach to getting more Titans inside. Though this time, the Titans were made on the inside. The humans turned into Titans, and this Beast Titan is the bringer of new Titans. Sprinkle some magic shit on them and they turn into Titans. I'm just joking. But the sudden emergence of this Titan, the Beast Titan, again, the fact that he didn't know the ODM gear, that really, makes it clear that he's not from the resistance. He's not from the military police or the scouts. He doesn't know the ODM gear, right? So again, that's so exciting to me. That this could be someone from a really secluded area, Again, in the first episode, I kind of thought perhaps this is some kind of ancient Titan that kind of came out of some kind of hibernation all of a sudden. But, all signs are leading to it being a human operator and not just a Titan, like an OG Titan. Is this Beast Titan related to Connie? Only because of those piercing yellow eyes, In the first episode, the moment I saw those eyes, unforgettable. I did have that thought, but it couldn't be Connie's dad, because this Titan seems to be fully in control. It seems like it's been in this, body for a long time, long time, It's, it feels at ease. It has control over the other Titans. So it's definitely not Connie's dad. Surely it couldn't be his dad. Another thought I had is that is it possible that this, Connie's village got exposed to the serum somehow? Maybe it was put in the water or something happened and they got exposed to the serum and, and then they all turned. But, that's the shocking thing, is that the whole village seems to have turned into Titans. And it coincides with this emergence of this beast Titan, right? So it all goes hand in hand. It feels like it might have done something to trigger this change, or they've been exposed to the serum somehow. Going back to season 1, I do know Aaron's dad likes to make the rounds and he goes to different places. Again, that's a mystery. I never saw enough of Aaron's dad to know like his outlook on things. So I don't even know. Of course Connie is absolutely rattled, and Reiner's reaction to all of this is quite telling. He freaks out, man. His one and only goal is to get Connie's mind off of this and get him out of here ASAP. Like, get him out quick. Because I'm gonna assume he heard that. I'm pretty sure he heard that. You could see that in his panic reaction to it. And he straight out dismisses any of Connie's claims about hearing something. And Connie, I think, even at one point goes, "I think my mom," and Reiner cuts him off. And he's like, "Connie!" He's just yelling at him. He's like, "Bro, like, get your mind in the game." And he gets Connie to kind of give up on that thought, and they kind of take off. So that whole reaction to it only makes the case for Reiner being the armored even stronger. It's getting stronger by the episode, actually. Reiner being the armored. I keep getting these little things that keep making that case stronger. Let's move on to Ymir and Krista. There's that scene of them on horseback, and again, still out of uniform and no gear. Ymir is trying to get them out of the front lines. She makes the case that they're out of uniform, they have no gear, they're kind of like sitting ducks right now. And the commander, again, I don't know her rank, the lady with the undercut, she said, "You're a soldier, this is kind of what you signed up for, I need you here." Ymir tried, but they basically have to stay. And again, Krista didn't like this though. As Ymir's trying to get out of this, here's a shot of Krista. She seems a bit upset that Ymir is trying to get them out of the front line. And Krista said, "I'm down to put my life on the line. Remember, that's the reason I joined the Scouts." She starts to question Ymir on her reasoning for joining the Scouts. And also she kind of alludes that the only reason Ymir joined the Scouts is because of her. But Ymir quickly, cuts her off and kind of shuts down that thought. See, but then I found out about Ymir trying to make Krista go to the military police, deep inside the walls, safe and sound, right? Of course, that changes it all up. And, she gave up her privilege to Krista so she could join the military police. But Krista, she said, on skill alone, I couldn't make it. The top 10, but you gave me that privilege. So yeah, man, Krista's really questioning Ymir's motivation for joining her in the Scouts. And for the first time ever, Krista brings up her family, and perhaps that being, does it have anything to do with my family? She said this. Instantly, that throws up red flags, because her family clearly has to be like an important family for her to bring it up. And Ymir was a bit more forthcoming and said, yes, it does have something to do with your family. And basically later on, Pastor Nick kind of confirms this as well, right? That Krista might be from an important family, right? And that the church has been asked to monitor Krista. So this makes me think that she, this has something to do with her lineage. Perhaps she might be nobility, perhaps a descendant of an important bloodline. And, that makes me just think of that scene again from the ending of that king and the 3 daughters eating the hearts. And perhaps that being some kind of, bloodline that has been carried down, or descendants, maybe she's related to that king somehow. Now, I might be so off on this, but I'm just trying to connect the things together. Maybe she is a descendant of some kind of important bloodline. But again, Ymir tries to play it down. She's like, I'm only here for myself. And as Krista's kind of like, okay, good. There's even this close-up shot of Ymir just kind of side-eyeing Krista. That look, that stare, full of secrets, clearly. So I get a quick shot of, not a quick shot, it's a scene actually, of Riko. I quite liked Riko from season 1, so it was really, really nice to see her again. I do hope I get to see her more, throughout the season. And she just felt like something felt completely off about this whole situation, and that, instead of coming in groups, these Titans are just like strays, just one at a time, just showing up. And that strange feeling carries right into the next scene of Hannes and his crew patrolling the walls, right, trying to look for that hole. And it gets even crazier because now he thinks something strange is going on here, because he thinks it must be getting close to the hole in Rose now, but it's quiet. No Titans to be seen, no noise. It's just really eerie. It's quiet. If there's a hole, there should be Titans, but there's no Titans. And at this point, it becomes clear that there's no hole. Oh, and the music in this scene, oh, beautiful, beautiful, man. It really had that creepy, unsettling tone, just this mysterious tone about it, right? That bad shit is afoot. So, brilliant music, man. Again, I just love the music in this show. And then this whole strange feeling continues into the next scene. And at this point, it's like at a fever pitch, the tension that's being built up. It's that crew, the Pompadour guy is just kind of like scared shitless. He's just on edge because, they're in pitch black. They're in pitch black darkness. Only these torches illuminating just a little bit of the surrounding areas. And he's just on edge. He's just thinking of any second now, the Titans are going to jump out at us, So just imagine that would be, oh my god, that'd be scary as fuck, man. Just imagine that, man, not being able to see them and just being on edge, just, bracing yourself for an attack any second. That would really mess you up, man. Thankfully for them, no Titans lunge out at them, but something even more puzzling happens. They run into the other crew. Basically, they've gone in a circle and run into each other now. And there's no hole. Neither of these sides saw a hole. They've met up again. So shit gets real, man. This confirmed it. This 100% confirmed it. There's no hole. A really eerie castle, in the middle of the night. And they decide they're gonna go to it. The castle itself actually has a really interesting name. And Hanji drops this right at the end of the episode, Utgard Castle. And I know that castle, Utgard Castle, is from Norse mythology. And I know that because I read up on Norse mythology stuff, because I've done Vikings on my channel, like reactions to that show, so I was really into it. So, I kind of, when Hanji dropped that, I was like, oh, okay. Utgard Castle is in Jotunheim, and Utgard Castle is meant to be the castle of giants, the home of giants, I believe. I thought it was really eerie that this is the name of the castle, because this show does have giants, in the form of Titans. Maybe that's as far as it goes, just it's a name for the castle, or maybe something more comes out of it, those connections of it being the home of giants. I guess I'll get to find out, man. So there's that scene in the buggy, all of them are there, Eren, Mikasa, Armin, and Hanji, and Levi, Pastor Nick. She basically puts it out there that this fragment in her hand is from Annie's crystal enclosure. It broke off, but the key thing here being that it didn't disappear. So it can break off from the Titan and it doesn't disappear. That's the point she's trying to make. She also puts it out there, that these walls are made up of humongous Titans. That's her hypothesis, and she seems pretty sure of this now, because she said she compared the piece of the wall to the fragment from Annie's hardened skin enclosure, identical, right? So she put two and two together, and this is basically the same thing Armin was thinking, right? So, again, great minds think alike. And also, as she said this, you can see there's a bit of a reaction from Pastor Nick. He kind of like puts his head down, his eyes are closed. So, maybe that's quite telling as well. At this point, this crew does not know that there's no hole in Rose. So they kind of continue carrying on as if they think there's a hole in Rose. But I know there isn't. It's one of those moments where the audience has more information than the characters, right? So her new plan now is that, what if Eren goes there and uses this hardened skin ability and, plugs a hole, right? And that's assuming if Eren could even do that, right? He hasn't done it yet, so he would have to figure out how to do it. That's a huge ask of him. Armin jumps in and gives his thoughts, and he's like, yeah, maybe, that could be a good idea. It's definitely, let's give it a shot. And he also said, it might be feasible to even go a bit further than that and plug Maria, the initial hole, the from episode 1, if it is feasible, right? But the thing is that Eren doesn't really have to plug the hole in Rose because there is no hole. But maybe if they could get to Maria, he could plug the hole using the hardened skin ability. Maybe, it's a big if. It's not even clear if he could actually do this yet. He's gonna have to try though, right? And Levi basically said it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you think. You're the only option we have. You have to try it. But going back to Armin, he even brings up the idea of potentially sneaking to Shiganshina, under the cover of darkness, at night, because they're assuming that the Titans are less active at night because of this, because of the lack of sunlight. But in the same episode, I see that's not the case. Perhaps only for this new group of Titans, the ones that surrounded the castle, and they seem super active. Maybe moonlight has a similar effect on them, right? But this group of Titans didn't need the sunlight, and they're super active. And this is the group that the Beast Titan brought, to the castle. I'm sure he sent them there, because it's the same crew that's been following him. The ugly one with the eyes regenerated, the one that covers itself up. And even going back to Hanji's experiments, Sonya and Bean, one of them did kind of doze off, it fell asleep because of no sunlight. The other one, no problem, it was up non-stop, right through the night. So she has seen that Titans can be active at night. In the grand scheme of things, it is a bit crazy that so much falls on the shoulders of Eren, this young adult, this kid basically still. It is a bit crazy that in these situations, life and death situations, plans are being made under the presumption that Eren might be able to do something that he hasn't done yet, so that's so much pressure. And going back to Eren's dad injecting him, did he think of this? Did he think of the connotations of this, this ability, and the pressure it's going to put on his son's shoulder? Still hoping to find out more on that, the reasoning for the serum and all that stuff. Again, the basement in Shiganshina was brought up. Even Eren brings it up. As he clutches the key, he brings it up. So I like the fact that Shiganshina is being mentioned again. So perhaps this season I can actually get to see the big secret, the truth inside the basement. But the good thing is he's full of enthusiasm. He's up for the challenge. Even Levi, as Levi told him, you have to basically do it. Eren gets really pumped up. He's like, yes, I'll do my best. That's a good thing, that he's up for it. Going back to around episodes 11, 12, and 13, that whole thing about him being the hope. And he even thinks to himself, I have to be the hope of humanity, the beacon. Later on, Levi kind of gives Pastor Nick a proper dose of reality. He brings him out there so he can see all these humans. You can see all these people displaced from their homes in this insane situation, so much loss of life. Kids are separated from their parents. You see that one kid, he's crying. He's clearly lost his parents. And you can see it's had a bit of a, you can see how rattled Pastor Nick is. Perhaps this has been an eye-opening experience for him, perhaps maybe a bit of a heartbreaking experience for him to see this, because he comes from Stohis, right? I saw Stohis in the first season, at the end of the first season, and that definitely seemed like a gated community, almost as if it's closed off, from the realities of this fucked up situation all of humanity is in. Yet, there's people inside, deep in the walls, that are, a bit ignorant to that, the whole situation outside. And perhaps, to be fair to Pastor Nick, maybe this is an eye-opening experience. He does open up a bit later on. I'll get into that. A lot of exciting stuff happens as he finally kind of, opens up a bit. But even after this experience, he remained tight-lipped for the most part, But this time, he did seem remorseful that he can't share anything. He basically, this time he's holding this information in reluctantly, as if there's much bigger things at play, and that he even said it's too big of a decision for a single person to make. So there's much larger things at play. He's remorseful. He looks remorseful that he can't, help out, and he can't share this information because he is just this one person, and there's something much larger going on here that he's just a part of, and he's not in a position to, make a decision like that, to put the secret out there, or the secrets out there. And Hanji thought always for Kami, and Kami's god, right? I've heard Kami in One Piece as well. She's like, are you doing this for some kind of god? He said I cannot say anything, but I know it's not for any type of god. I feel like there's again, there's something to do with that ending, because I did see Pastor Nick flash in that ending, and like the cult, and the people praying inside, the ones that got crushed, I saw a flash of them in the ending. So I feel like it's some kind of thing that's being passed down from generation to generation. There's some kind of some kind of order, cult like thing that's going on. All of it kind of keeps coming back to some kind of like nobility, some kind of lineage, bloodline. This is kind of how Krista starts to get into all of this. I think surprisingly he did give up some information, so I do give him some credit for giving them something, and I feel like this experience he had of seeing these people might have changed him a bit. So yeah, man, bring some new information to the table. A name drop, right? So a person of great interest that they have been instructed to monitor. I thought for sure it's gonna be Ymir, but I get a bit of a surprise, and instead it's Krista. And apparently she might know things that even they cannot perceive. So, Krista seems to be the key to something. But the thing is, I haven't seen anything about Krista that makes me believe that she's this sneaky person that's up to something. So far, the only thing I've seen is that she's this incredibly nice person that is always helping people. But the funny and ironic thing here is that a lot of them have jokingly called her a goddess before. Sasha called her a goddess. She's like, why are you a goddess? This is around the time she brought her, food after that run, the lap she had to do. Then as she came to Reiner, Jean, and Armin's rescue, they thought she's a goddess. And, Reiner and Ymir have joked about marrying her, though Reiner seemed quite serious about that, wanting to marry her in episode 18. So, there is something about her. There is something about her, you can see that she's clearly meant to be someone quite beautiful. You can see in the animation, the long golden blonde hair, the big blue eyes. Armin even just now has said, oh, she's cute. So you can see that she's meant to stand out. She does stand out. So it's not that hard to believe that she might be special. The only thing is I just haven't seen anything as of this point to make me think that, she's doing anything sneaky or she's up to something. Is it possible that she is part of some nobility or some lineage, but she's out here trying to distance herself from it? She's trying to do her own thing and be her own person and not be attached to that name or that family that she, brought up as she's talking to Ymir. Maybe that could be it. She's trying to just be her own person. Another exciting thing here is Hanji's reaction to the name drop. Hanji's like, Ymir. So I know that she knows this name because I checked out Ilsa's notebook. So that's so exciting to me, the fact that now there's a name drop, and Hanji knows this name, and now she knows that this Ymir person is part of the 104th, and that perhaps she could get some answers out of her now. That's the name that was in Ilsa's notebook. That's the name the Titan said as it bowed down. It also makes it clear that Ilsa's notebook is meant to be watched before season 2. I know there's a lot of debate. Before I checked it out, there's a lot of debate about skipping that until you've seen season 2, but it's kind of clear that it was meant to be watched before this. Because if you haven't seen Ilsa's notebook before season 2, you're going to be confused at this scene. I think my reaction to that scene is probably the thing they intended. They wanted people to be really like happy or like surprised or excited about this name drop, and Hanji knowing it. To me, it's clear now that it was a preference thing. People just wanted newcomers of the show to experience the Beast Titan speaking first. But in terms of my position on this, if after seeing all of this and clearly it being part of the narrative, if a newcomer of the show is going to ask me if they should check out Ilse's notebook before or after season 2, I'm telling them check it out before. It's so clear that it's part of the narrative. Anything other than that is just a preference thing of you wanting a specific reaction before that moment happens. And I'm happy I checked out Ilsa's notebook because that made it so exciting for me, to see Hanji's reaction to that. And speaking of Ymir, it transitions into the castle, and it's showing me Reiner, who seems to be holding a bracelet. It looked like a bracelet. I think a gold bracelet. And he's got this shocked and baffled look in his face. And I believe he said, what's the meaning of this? And as he looks at Ymir, and the next thing he said is you. There's like a subtitle. The subtitle says you. And Ymir gives him this ominous look, man, the side eye. So Reiner just, I don't know, it looked like he figured something out there. has he just clocked, the placement of that subtitle "you" before they get interrupted? Has he just clocked that Ymir might be a spy, like a Titan? Maybe. But if he has come to that conclusion, again, I don't know if that's what he's thinking. But if he's thinking that, that makes things really interesting because he clearly doesn't know this. Then he's he's like the prime suspect for the armored for me. So if he doesn't know, that means there might be two separate parties here, man. That all depends on both of them actually ending up being the people I think they are. I'm quite confident that that Reiner is the armored, and I'm still gonna stick to my original prediction from Ilse's notebook that this Ymir person, who happens to be this person, Krista's friend, is gonna be another Titan, a human operator. I have no reason to believe otherwise. And this scene makes that hunch even stronger. It makes it even more likely. So a lot of interesting things going on here. But they get interrupted because the castle's being attacked. In terms of that bracelet he's holding, I have seen jewelry in the show before. I saw Annie's gold ring. She uses it to trigger her transformation. I've seen that. Now I've seen this bracelet. And this bracelet showed up in the end credits. In the end credits, it had on the side, it had some writing on it. So this bracelet has shown up before, So something strange going on. It means something. And yeah, going back to the castle being attacked, they all go up top, and Connie spots the beast, and he looks over at Ymir, Reiner, and Bertolt, and they are just rattled. It took Connie by surprise. Actually, Connie was a little surprised to see them like that. They were they haven't seen anything like this clearly. So all three of them were super shocked about that. But yeah, that brings you right back to the ending, man. Great episode. A lot of information, coming at me. And I love that. It's really, these episodes are going by so fast. So I love that, man. Super excited to keep moving on. It left out on a peak, right? So I'm excited to move on. But yeah, man, if you enjoyed it, please smash that thumbs up. Leave your comments. Let me know what you guys thought. Huge thank you to all the amazing patrons. Thank you so much for sticking around. You guys are absolutely brilliant. I have a lot of respect for you guys. Because my uploads are quite irregular. There's no schedule to them. So the fact that so many of you are still patrons is it's quite incredible to me. I have a lot of respect for you guys. So thank you. Thank you so much for being patient. So to me that just means that so many of you appreciate the stuff I'm putting out, regardless of how quick it comes out. So I really appreciate that. I respect that. Thank you so much for sticking around. And again, a reminder to anyone else, if you're into my stuff and you would like to check out episodes ahead of the YouTube releases, a few episodes ahead, check out the Patreon page. Maybe you'll like it. There's also full-length reactions. I'm super happy to be able to, offer those to people who want to check out the full episodes. So yeah, man, check it out. And in turn, you'll also be supporting me. But yeah, thank you again. Okay, man, so that was fun. 3 episodes back to back. Really enjoyed it. Next 3 are going to be 4, 5, and 6 once I get a chance. But yeah, man, thanks for checking that out.